We're here to talk about Navistar's Diagnostic electrical system. Okay, what that term means, it's kind of all-encompassing when we talk about it. There's a lot of acronyms that are kind of used interchangeably and loosely together, and I'm sure everyone's heard the term DLB. So we'll talk about all this today in the next about 45 minutes. So first of all, I would like to thank ASC for this opportunity. Navistar's had a long-standing relationship with ASC, and we appreciate the time they give us today. I will give a short introduction of myself. We'll talk some terminology that's needed for this, new product style changes. I'll explain that a little closer when we get there. Diagnostic electrical system will be the meat of this, and the majority of it. The last few slides will wrap up with a little bit of the software, explaining how we're going to view the signals, see the faults, and such things as that. So a little bit about myself, Rick Childers. I worked at a Navistar dealership for a little over 30 years as a technician, and then as a foreman, and I became an in-house trainer the last several years I was there. We had multiple locations I hit every month. I also taught as an adjunct instructor at a local community college there for several years before coming to Chicago to become an instructor for Navistar. I am a previous ASC award winner, currently ASC Master Truck Certified and Navistar Diamond Certified. The terminology we're going to talk about is multiplexing, diamond logic control, and new horizon. And then we'll just kind of wrap that into the system. So Webster defines multiplexing as being or relating to a system of transmitting several messages or signals simultaneously on the same circuit or channel. So what we're talking here is the datalinks on the truck. Datalinks and multiplexing is not new. Telephone systems have used multiplexing for many, many years. Trucks, Navistar in particular, has been using multiplexing for about 20 years. So it is not new. We've used it in other forms previously, and it's pretty much standard across the industry now. So Diamond Logic, what is it? Well, simply put, it is Navistar's chassis electrical system. So it's kind of all-encompassing. I used to say it was everything but the radio. I can't really say that anymore, as the radio now communicates on a Datalink, and if it has a sleeper with the rear radio controls, it will talk on a Datalink. As soon as we put the vehicle in reverse, it mutes the radio. So even the radio is part of the multiplexed electrical system now. So this system is designed to simplify some of the wiring and schematics. It has minimized some of that. We use less wires, and a good example of that is on our new model trucks. You can order them with up to 30 switches in the dash for various things, whether pneumatic or electrical type controls, but primarily now I'm going to be talking about electrical. So in them 30 switches, you would have 30 power leads coming in from a fuse. You would have output wires, 30 of them, and if there's a pilot light of any kind inside that switch, there would be a third wire. So it could be up to 90 wires for those 30 switches. Nowadays, we can simplify that and have those switches talk on a Datalink down to our body controller, and it will disperse that information down to an output or another module to force an output. So the wires are made smaller in that terms and less of them. All of our wiring diagrams have color coding, or should I say the wires are color coded with wires, and our diagrams depict that. Them circuits, the older trucks, we have the older style paper wiring diagrams. The new ones are what they refer to as interactive, which is kind of a whole new ball game, but it's very cool how you can click on a wire and it'll define a lot of attributes of that wire and circuit. Technology used to electrically tie in our body and chassis together. That technology allows the TEMs, or truck equipment manufacturers, to integrate with our vehicle, to upfit them, to add electrical and pneumatic type options onto a truck. Next slide, information highway, that is the datalinks that I was referring to. Depending upon how the vehicle's options, there's typically multiple datalinks or multiple highways on a truck to integrate the different modules together. This is an example of 3 modules communicating together on an information highway or data link. So in this form of communication, it is J1939. The rules for the J1939 is set forth by SAE, or the Society of Automotive Engineers. Bosch actually designed the CAN system. SAE set the rules, or the J protocol, for software and hardware for the system. And in this system, none of the modules are actually in control over the others. There's no real brain to the system. They all are considered master modules. So an example of that would be in an ABS skidding event. The wheels are sliding around. The ABS controller will send that information up the data link to whatever module that needs to hear that. And if it is an engine with an exhaust brake or an engine brake of any kind, it's going to retain that information and shut off those devices because those could contribute to a skidding event. If it's an automated transmission with a lockup torque converter, it's also going to receive that information and shut off the lockup torque converter, as it also would or could contribute to the skidding event. So they're all going to share that information. So, and that's true of all brands of trucks nowadays. So we have added modules we can put on these vehicles to integrate whatever our customers need, as I mentioned earlier, for pneumatic type or electrical outputs. And those can be controlled by switches in the dash. In the old days, I call it prior to about 2017, our switches talked on a special switch data link. In 2017 and up, they talk on a new data link. So when a driver pushes a switch, it's information sent down a data link to the body controller, as I kind of mentioned earlier. If it's a pneumatic type device, it's going to turn that solenoid on or off to control possibly a PTO or air ride suspension or whatever an upfitter may install. Another option is remote power modules. You can order like 3 of these on a truck. TEMs, or truck equipment manufacturers, can add more after the fact. And this module we'll talk about later gives us options for electrical type outputs. And of course, other controllers we talked about. The body controller itself is considered kind of the heart of, but not the brain of. So we talked about that. A lot of the devices will input to the body controller before going out to a device or module. So it's kind of the heart of, and there's a lot of modules on our communication or information highways. So all the information for the chassis is told to the body people through a website. So our TMs, or sometimes they're called upfitters or bodybuilder people, they have a website that's available. You can Google Navistar bodybuilder. It's a free website that gives the information to help those people tie into our chassis to upfit them or add other components to it. Several modules and some of the things are factory orderable, and they can be tailored after it's installed and programmed for this safeties and interlocks or other type of controls. Automation of tasks, several of the feature codes, and I'll give you an example of like an air suspension dump. The driver's parked, he flips the air suspension dump, the rear of the chassis drops down, if it's a box type truck and he's offloading something. If he forgets to flip the switch back to its normal height or normal position, as soon as he releases the park brake and takes off, the automated task is at a certain mile an hour, it will automatically raise that air suspension back up. Protection equipment, there again, it can protect the suspension and drive line. In that case, if the air suspension wasn't raised, it could cause problems. Driving off with a dump bed up or something could cause issues. So we can have lights or alarms go off to protect the equipment, the driver, and anyone around the vehicle. Some of these modules help reduce upfitting it. We supply them with a module, and with that module, whether it's an air solenoid or the remote power module, that body builder would not have to typically cut holes into the cab and add switches. Those are already pre-installed. It's almost plug and play. The air solenoid will be on the frame rail. You push a 1/4-inch air line into it, and you can use that pneumatic device. If it's an electrical type output through an RPM module, it's plug and play. You populate the connector, connect it to the RPM module, and that feature's already ready to go. Another cool thing with this is Navistar supports these TEMs. They will go out to the upfitters and they will train them. They have a special, I believe it's a 3-day class to teach them how to write logic. So when they write this logic, they can write some crazy stuff to make it work how it's supposed to work. And I have a great example of this on the next page. This is some advanced logic that was written onto a truck. If you look in the highlighted bar, it says rotary dump. This is an example of a specialized truck. It drives onto a set of railroad tracks. It's a dump truck. Steel wheels will come down. It'll drive down the track. It gets to where it needs to go. It's going to stop. The dump bed's going to raise up and rotate 90 degrees and dump rock alongside the railroad tracks. So there's a long line of logic that's written into this, and upfitters or TEMs are trained to write their own logic for their specialized equipment. They know all the safeties that need to be integrated in, such as possibly a park brake. It may only work with the park brakes on or only work when it's off or whatever. And it's not requiring them to add extra switches into the park brake circuits and all. It's already there. It's in the body controller. They're just using those signals for that. So it makes it pretty nice. Other type feature codes, we have an auto range inhibit, prevents transmission into going into gear for different reasons. It may or may not be desirable for the transmission to change gears, and they can prevent that. Dash indicator lights and buzzers, like I stated in this. Pre-trip light inspection is a very simple feature code, and if it's ordered from the factory, fine. If it's not, it's typically something you can, after the fact, program in very easily, and there's no wiring, no switches, no anything that's got to be added. Simple, put a check mark in a box, program it in, and at that point in time, the driver activates it, and he can walk around the truck, and it's going to flash the lights in a certain sequence. So you can check the high beams, low beams, fog lights, marker lights, turn signals, brake lights, all without the need of someone else being in the cab to move the turn signal switch up and down to hit the brake pedal, and so on. And if it's a truck with a trailer, through the trailer cord, the trailer can also be inspected in this pre-trip light inspection. It'll essentially do every light except for the backup lights, which are usually tied into an automatic transmission controller. Or if it's a manual transmission, it's a simple switch and it's not inputted or controlled through a body controller. Park brake alarm is a simple feature you can turn on. If the driver does not set the park brake, he comes up to a stop, shuts the key off, drops the manual transmission into gear. The third interlock there, as soon as he opens the driver's door, it's going to give the city horn or electric horn pulses or beeps to alert him he forgot to set the park brake. Wipers, there's multiple codes for the wipers, featured codes that are simple check marks. One is force wipers to low is what it's called. And what that means, if the driver has his wipers on high, pulls up to a truck stop, needs to use a restroom or goes in to get a soda at a gas station, and he left his wipers on high. As soon as he sets a park brake, sets a timer for about 60 seconds. And at that point in time, the wipers will go to their lowest intermittent setting. In case it stops raining, it prevents the wiper blades from being dry wiped or destroyed. Another one is headlights on with wipers. So normally when you're going down the road, you have what they call daytime running lights, which is typically less than 100% intensity. A lot of times it's like 70 or 80% intensity of the bulbs. With this feature code, as soon as you turn the wipers on, the headlight bulbs will be 100% in low beam. Another feature code is it will disable cruise control whenever the wipers are activated. So that's something they can turn off or on if desired. Auto headlights, kind of self-explanatory, hands-free, radio mute, I'd mentioned that. Key fob, a key fob can be programmed not only to unlock and lock the doors, it can also program other outputs like a work light or something like that. So if he wants a light to come on before walking up to the door of the truck on his key fob, he has an auxiliary button that'll do that. Theft deterrent, if a truck is ordered with that, there's 6 switches in the dash, and the vehicle will start and run and idle just fine. If someone tries to release the park brake, this code, if not entered, it will die within so many seconds. So if they enter the code before they release the park brake, then if it's the correct code, they can drive off. Okay, on this slide, in 2017, we had a major vehicle change, model changes. The Star trucks are all gone except for the Lone Star, which is the middle one in the bottom row. They retained the Lone Star. It was very popular. Still had a body change to it. In the lower row of trucks, starting on the far right, previously that would have been called a Durastar. And the new version of that is now called a MV for medium vocational. To the left of that would be the Work Star previously. It's now called the HV for heavy vocational. In the middle bottom is our Lone Star, very popular still. To the left of that is now called the Regional Haul or RH. Previously it was called the TransStar. Its model designation was an 8600. To the left of that, in the bottom row, previously was called a ProStar. It is now called an LT for line haul transport truck. The upper row are examples of our HX or heavy extreme lineup, and the previous ones were called Paystars, and it was known by a few other things also. So easy way to detect the newer vehicles. Navistar termed them New Horizons by looking at the mirror, or look a little notch at the door where the glass and the door meet. That little notch or the mirror will help you from a distance identify it's a 2017 or newer vehicle. And as you see on the hood, all the acronyms now are there when you get up close. So in 2017, there was an architecture change. We have multiple data links on these trucks, and we'll break them down a little further here. This is an example of a fully equipped truck with just about every module you can find on it. So it can be quite complicated what's going on, that information highways. So within this, we have public and private data links. The circles here indicate the public ones. So the ones you're going to see on the Datalink connector, the DLC they call it, underneath the dash where you connect your scan tool or laptop to. These public ones, the upper right is called a cab bus, which is 250,000 bits per second. That's the baud rate on that, and you see some of the different modules that may be communicating on that. Upper left is the powertrain bus or powertrain data link. It is 500,000 bits per second. So if you have a green data link connector underneath the dash, that is going to let you know it is a 500,000 bit per second data link. If it's the black 9-pin, then that's going to be the 250,000 bit per second data link. So the powertrain goes on pin C and D of this connector, and it is both of these are forms of J1939. So, and the next slide is going to depict some of the privates. Depends on how it's equipped. There may be multiple private data links. So in the upper left is our, it's called an engine private bus. That's essentially your after treatment system. Going to be talking on that. That is 250,000 bits per second, and it is considered a J1939 data link. You have in the middle there an ABS private. If it's got the advanced braking system with either roll stability or electronic smart protection, some of these have with that excuse me, it's going to have collision avoidance, can be a portion of the ABS system now, so on, tied into that private. Another private is our, in the lower left, our body builder data bus. So some of the smart modules, such as the RPM that I had mentioned earlier, remote power module, may communicate on this body builder data bus. It's 250,000 bits per second, and it is also J1939. Lower right in the green, these essentially what you see here is everything the driver is going to touch as far as switches in the dash, turn on the headlights. That's part of our light control module. The door pods. So when they're rolling up and down the windows, locking the doors, these are all the things that talks on this HMI. That acronym stands for Human Machine Interface, sometimes called the low speed data link, and this is 125,000 bits per second. So then you see the zigzags for some of the telematics, some of the wireless GPS type stuff. There's a lot of options there for multiple things going on. Gateway modules, there's a couple of them on our trucks. The ECM or engine control module is the one. It interfaces with the after treatment system, private CAN. Any information on that that is needed can be sent down into our Datalink connector for fault recording or retrieval, and that's sent through the ECM. The other gateway module is the body control module. So you can see it has multiple data links going into it. It acts as just that. It's kind of a buffer in between the data links. By keeping the privates and by using the gateways, we can kind of protect the truck from hackers and other things such as that. So not all information needs to be shared with all modules. So the buffers or gateways helps keep the data link traffic down on the important data links. Okay, if we're looking in the cab, we're going to start talking about some of the modules in the cab here. And the first one is going to be our body control module. Over the years, we've gone through several different ones. This is referred to as a generation 4, which came out in April of 2015. So prior to that, we had other modules. Of course, the newer they are, they get faster, they get better, they get stronger. Okay. As far as the acronyms, when the first ones came out, they actually referred to them as an ESC for electrical system controller. So you may hear that acronym or term, or BC, body controller, or body control module, BCM. All these kind of used interchangeably for this module. So the terms aren't always consistent, but it's going to refer to this module here. So where are you going to find this on our truck? If you sit in the driver's seat, kick your left foot over to the panel to the left, it's underneath that panel. That's where we're going to find this body control module. So this is what it looks like. It has 2 additional connectors over the previous generation, 15 more inputs, 6 more outputs. This module now houses what they call the real-time clock. Okay, so when emissions started getting stricter, trucks went to heavy-duty onboard diagnostics. So anytime a fault occurred that made the truck pollute, we gave it a freeze frame or a snapshot of that information of all the sensors that occurred, and it put a date and timestamp to it. And it's this real-time clock that makes that happen. So that is now built into this body controller. So any module on the Datalink can share that date and time. To make that possible, on this circuit board is soldered in a battery. Has an estimated time life of about 10 years. Now that's a mathematical thing. Out in the real world, it's going to fail. There is a replacement underneath the cover, the white cover there. Initially, there's nothing on the back side of it. When the battery fails on, it's soldered in, you can buy a replacement battery that goes on the back side of the cover. It's a plug and play. Little pigtail plugs into the circuit board. And what we do from there is we'll go into our software, and our Diagnostic builder software is a good example. It will allow you to resync the time clock. So what it's going to do is take the date and time off the laptop. It's going to compare it to the body controller. If they're not the same, it will set a fault. Then on the software, it's kind of automated. It'll pop up a screen that says, do you want to sync or synchronize this? And just say yes, and it's done. That's simple. All right, the switches in the dash, when the driver reaches up and pushes one of these, is actually an actuator. It's not really a switch. On the back side of this, this actuator is going to depress micro switches on the circuit board that is part of this switch pack module. So each actuator position has 2 upper switches and 2 lower switches, and they're for redundancy. If one of them fails, you have a backup of that. So each switch or actuator position has 3 possible states. So either the upper switches are depressed, or the lower, or neither. So it depends on what is programmed into that. The computer knows if it's programmed to be a latching switch. Either the upper ones are compressed constantly or the bottom ones are compressed constantly. If it sees a state where neither are depressed, in that case, it will set a fault. Says there's something wrong. So, and we do have variations for center stable, which means neither upper or lower are depressed. And if that slot is programmed for that, then it'll recognize that. So it's simple. When you push one of these actuators, inputs received with the micro switch, the circuit or the switch pack module will report down that HMI data link to the body controller. If it's direct output of the body controller, it's going to command that. If it's an RPM module, it may command the RPM module. First, before it's going to do that, though, it's going to look for are there any interlocks or safeties that are tied into it. So these are criteria that must be met, and you can make it, like I said before, lock to a park brake on or off, or certain air pressures, certain gears, certain road speeds, a lot of different factors that can be programmed into that interlock to either prevent or enable an output from coming on. So on these switches, you see the green LED in the center of it. When the driver pushes the upper portion of that and the green light comes on solid, that means that output, whatever it's associated to, should be on. If there's an interlock that hasn't been met, it's going to be a slow flashing yellow. And with a slow flashing yellow light, there's not going to be any faults associated with it. It's not a problem. It may be a problem with the driver understanding how it functions. Maybe something you have to explain to the driver, hey, this only works when the park brake's released, or it only works when you're going down the road, or whatever. So an interlock pertaining to a PTO can have 42 different parameters programmed into it. And we'll talk about that in a PTO slide. So a red fast flashing light in that actuator switch is going to indicate a failure. Typically, it's going to be on the output of that device. Could be the switch itself, or it could be other things. So if it's red flashing, there will be a DTC or diagnostic trouble code in the form of an SPN, an FMI, that you will be able to extract from the body controller for that. And on the right, you see all the different colors. LEDs are programmable into all these different colors for different variations or options, or whatever the customer desires there. Looking at some of the switch attributes, we can have 30 switches in the new style trucks. You can order customized or blank switches and customize stickers to put on them, and they can be for different vocations, such as a tow truck or a dump truck or boom truck or whatever. You can have stickers specific to those different vocations for those. It's easy to customize it. So, real easy to get the switches and actuators out, to move them around and stuff. They're fully programmable, very simple. All right, this depicts with the red modules some of the devices you may find that are integrated on our chassis. One of which would be the RPM or remote power module. Like I say, you can order 1 to 3 on a truck, or should I say 0 to 3. After it leaves the factory, the truck equipment manufacturer can outfit them with, I think, at least 3 more. Depends on the truck model. So with this option, you're going to get 6 generic switches inside the dash that are going to control 6 outputs depicted by the brown connector and the red wires on that remote power module. So these outputs will default from the factory turned on to 20 amps. They're fully programmable in 1/10 of an amp increments, from 1/10 of an amp all the way up to 20. So if you're running an LED light or a string of them, and you know it only draws 4 to 5 amps, probably don't want to leave it fully turned on to 20. If there is an issue somewhere where wire grounded or shorted, it could melt the wire. So they're very easily to program or detune down into a more reasonable number. So it's simple. The first switch in the row, switch 1, will be output 1 here. So they kind of follow a pattern there very simply. The left-hand connector on the RPM has a little loop or jumper in it here. This will identify on that bodybuilder Datalink where there's RPM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by the position of that jumper. This is a black connector. We also use it other than address identification. We will use it for inputs. So if you're running a PTO, you would run a PTO feedback switch here. That would maybe run a PTO light in a dash and a PTO hour meter in the truck. So we have some customers that when the PTO is running, they're typically not driving down the highway, they're typically stationary. So in that case, for fueling and fuel taxes, anytime the PTO is running, they can record amount of fuel consumed for tax purposes. I think that's enough for RPM modules. There's a lot of different options here. We can have 1 switch control 2 outputs. There's a lot of variations where this is possible. We can use the black connector also in the case of a garbage truck. The guy on the back is pulling the levers, it's running the compactor. with a simple input signal in here, and we can program it to look for ground or look for 12 volts. And there's one in between called a floating. So when he pulls that lever in the back, it can signal this RPM module to ramp the engine, just for the compactor or whatever device. So we can use a black connector for throttle control at times. Air solenoid options. So these trucks can have a capability of 16 air solenoids, which will give us 4 manifolds or brackets. The solenoids come in 3 varieties. The color of the ring identifies its purpose. So a yellow color ring, it's a normally closed solenoid. When it's de-energized, there's no air coming out. The yellow ring identifies it as air horn only, and it'll flow approximately 6 cubic feet per minute of air out. It's all 1/4 inch push to connect brake line going into these. The exhaust out the bottom. Solenoid in the middle with the black ring identifies as normally closed. Once again, de-energizes, no air coming out. 12 volts going into it, it's going to output air. So these, the black and white, will output approximately 4 cubic feet per minute of airflow. And through special features, you can have one switch control 2 solenoids if you need more than 4 CFM of airflow. The white solenoid depicts normally open, so when it's de-energized, there's air coming out of it all the time. On our trucks, we use 2 of these side by side for an air suspension dump. And in between those 2 solenoids with the white rings, they'll have a little shuttle valve, shuttles back and forth. And we use those, like I say, to raise and lower the air suspension. So these are directly hardwired to the body controller. They have a common ground. There's 4 high side drivers coming out to control these. This is depicting a pneumatic or air shift PTO. We have the options for an electric shift or air shift. This is an example of an air shift. You see the feedback signal going back into the body controller. With this, we can program in 42 different parameters. So in this, they have rules of engagement. So say the driver wants it to only engage below 3 miles an hour. They only want it to engage below 800 RPM. Those are rules of engagement. Then we have rules for disengagement to prevent like overspeeds. So we can have it disengage the PTO at 45 mile an hour, or say 1800 RPM, or things like that. We can have it disengage for safety reasons. Then they have rules for re-engagement. Once it's been disengaged, do you want to allow it to re-engage when it comes back down into the engagement rules? You can say yes or no to that. And then they have a set of alarms that can be turned off or on to tell you when it's out of the criteria, when it's disengaging or what have you. So it's fully programmable. A lot of different things is possible there. Of course, we can do that with our software. It's called Diagnostic Builder. Everyone likes to call it DLB. We use it for diagnostics and programming. So with the software on your laptop, if you're interested in purchasing Google and Navistar service software, and there's places online, or go to your local dealer, they can help you get your software. The comm device, your communication, we don't like to preach any of them, but the NextSync USB Link 2 is pretty common across the board. I don't know of anything it does not work with. There may be. That's one we like to use to connect to the vehicle. Once we connect to the vehicle and open up the software, it looks something like this, okay? So what I have highlighted here is a VIN. We're just going to hit a couple of the tabs. There's a faults tab. So if we were here to check the faults on the vehicle, once we're connected and we make sure our key is on, okay? These will connect at key off, but after it's fully connected, you turn the key on. We can take it out of editing mode. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, it says the word editing. Very simply, we can go into diagnostics. This software will report faults out of non-Navistar modules. So if it's a Cummins engine, if it's a Bendix brake system, Wabco brakes, Eaton, Allison transmissions, this software will report faults basically out of anything that's reporting on the J1939 powertrain data link. And it will also clear faults, even out of those third-party modules. So if we were here to use this to diagnose a fault, we would basically bring up the feature code we're trying to diagnose. So in this screen, highlighted is our feature code. In the left-hand column, it gives it a 595 number. Okay. In the center, a description of it. In this case, it's a HVAC. In the right-hand column, this tells us with the check mark it is software or feature that is installed into this body controller or truck. If I was to scroll down here, the bottom of this would be a bunch of feature codes without check marks. Those are going to be feature codes that are available but not currently installed. Okay. So once again, highlighting the feature code in the top is going to bring up in the bottom half of the window the parameters or ID numbers, parameter identifiers pertaining to that feature code. So this is going to be the high and low FET settings for the field effect transistors, and in this example for HVAC, some of the temperature settings, some of the pressures, so on and so forth. So if we were here to diagnose a truck, we would highlight the feature code, click the button that says make session, okay? Within the red circle. Once you click that, it's going to go out and reach and grab all the inputs, all the outputs associated with that feature code, and it's going to bring them into a new window so we can look at them. So once again, look in the upper right-hand corner, we make sure we're in diagnosing mode for this. And you're going to look at all the signals. So the top line depicts AC clutch. In the pins column, we see it is on connector 1603, pin C. And it's called a digital output because it's either on or it's off. So in this case, it has a box there. So when the box is empty, that's off. When the box has a check mark in it, then that's signal, whatever it is on. So we can diagnose from this screen. Look in the tabs, I'm under signals and watched. So in signals and watched, we can look at everything here. And on the next screen here, let me bounce, we can look at it in what they call a connector view. So all them same signals, if it's going into and out of a connector, which most of them are, we can physically see, not physically, but we can see by the check marks whether that device is on or off. In this picture, if you look close, it's showing no check marks in the wipers. The wipers are off. The park brake is set. The door switch is open. So if you look on the left-hand side, it shows you what your air pressure gauges are reading, your fuel level. Here you see high side pressure transducer, what it's reading. So we can look at all the signals in and out. So you go to our diagnostics manual, and it's going to give you the criteria that's got to be met before an AC clutch will engage. That's what we're going to use for our diagnostics, is that manual. Here we're going to wrap up. What is Diamond Logic? It is an electrical system that uses multiplex technology to provide control and communication between major functional areas of the vehicle, including the body. What does it do? Diamond Logic streamlines truck chassis and body equipment integration and performance. How does it work? Diamond Logic allows you to custom program the equipment parameters among a set of predetermined tasks. By automating functions of the truck, you increase the performance of the operation while reducing potential equipment damage, and you're enhancing safety. So our trucks can be connected. We have what they refer to as OnCommand Connect. And in these, essentially the trucks are connected via a telematic device or system that can track the vehicle as it's going down the road. We can see the faults. We can see a lot of the sensors as it's driving up and down the road. Dispatcher can sit at their computer and they can locate the nearest dealer through this, through our website. They can schedule in the truck for service or repairs. And if the truck is equipped with the Navistar's telematics system, has the capability of over-the-air programming. So that is an option on the trucks. I threw in this slide. This is from our early version, Super Truck 1. We have a 2 out now. Super Truck 1 was shown on the Discovery Channel. This is a joint venture with many companies that are listed down the side of the trailer. The Department of Energy also sponsored this. Its goal was to achieve at least 50% improvement in freight efficiency, and in reality, we got 104% out of it. Okay, it did achieve 13 miles per gallon, which is a 60% improvement over the 2016 ProStar. So this is not a production truck by no means. And there is a Super Truck 2 coming. That is out. I shouldn't say coming out, that is out. So that is it. If there's any questions, Dave or Dan, you want to let me know?
Well, Rick, first of all, I just want to thank you for that very insightful look at the DLB electrical system. And Dan, I know looking at what I see in the questions pane, we've got a lot of very interested people that have some good questions. So have you got anything queued up and ready to go?
Dave, I do. Could you stay just for a second and remind folks that of how they can get a copy of this?
So after the webinar, we will send out an email, a follow-up email that will have a link to the video of this on YouTube. And for those that have attended the live session, that's what's going on right now in real time, you also receive a certificate.
Okay, so Todd asks, are there 2 diagnostic connectors, a black one and a green one, on this particular chassis system?
No, I'm sorry if I confused you with that. The black is the older trucks. They will have a black connector. And when we transition from the 250K Datalink, they went to the green. The green will let us know that this truck has the 500,000 bit per second powertrain Datalink. So no, only one. Older vehicles will have black, newer ones will have the green.
Keith asks, does the diagnostic system include a screen with menu options to source codes, system modules, and diagrams similar to the E1 system? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with E1, but our software is completely separate from our service portal. So you would need to use the DLB software to view the faults and view the signals. From there, you'd have to go to our website to open up a wiring diagram or a diagnostic manual. So it's separate.
So on Keith, he might be calling, emailing or responding back with a question. So his comment may have been related to a screen actually inside the vehicle. So
as far as the gauge cluster or other type display?
I'm guessing that might be something, and I'm going to lose him in this this maze of questions right now. So, but I would say that's go ahead.
Well, I was going to say in our gauge cluster itself, it will display some faults in there. We do have options on some of the Class 8 trucks for a video display or driver information display that will show some of that stuff on it also, but that is not standard. But yes, our gauge clusters will display some fault information, yes.
Okay, then Edwin asks, what is the approximate cost of the software and can an independent purchase it?
I do not see costs at all. I have no idea. Yes, independents can purchase it. Like I said, Google it. I think I gave a link to the ASC gentleman there. I don't know if they'll send it out at the end, but if you Google Navistar service software, it will take you to a place to purchase it. And yes, anyone can purchase it.
And again, the recording of this webinar will be available, so you can flip through it and find that link. All right, and then Kevin asks, is there a way for, actually several people asked this type of question, is there a way to keep up Navistar credentialing or certification even if the service professional does not work at the dealership anymore? Or is there a way for folks that are not connected to, another word about that, is there a way for folks that are not connected with Navistar to be able to be trained by Navistar?
Yes and no. There is available through our dealer education system, where customers such as private shops or municipalities or whatever can purchase access to our online training. As far as coming to a Navistar dealer hands-on course, I don't believe that's available to anyone other than a dealer, unless they're a large fleet that purchase our trucks. Those type situations, we do have gentlemen that go out and do training for the large fleets that purchase our trucks.
Douglas asked if the terminating resistors on the system diagnostic network, are those internal to modules or external?
On the main data links, they're all external. When you get into third party like Cummins, they do their own thing in their powertrain. But if it's a Navistar engine, they're external. If it's a cab, they're external. The HMI, they're external. The body, they're external.
And then Thomas had a question about some of the specific interfaces that are approved to function with the Diamond Logic service. Do you have knowledge of those, or is that something that, again, you have to go to the website for?
You'd have to go to the website for that. Those are the software guys.
And then another Thomas asks, is the communication architecture the same for all the different weight classes and vocation of trucks that you spoke about today?
All but our small class 4 or 5 vehicle called the CV. It is unique and different, as that is a joint venture with another company. But yes, if it's an HV, MV, HX, LT, RH, those are pretty standard, yes.
And then Kevin made a comment. He says that they were never able to clear the Cummins, and that's from a car guy, so I got rid of the G. I did well, I hope. Fault codes from the DLB software. Is that something new?
It is not something new. It is not actually designed. The DLB software isn't designed by purpose to clear those faults. It's kind of a side note. Actually, if you want to clear a third party, you need to really buy their software. That's the purpose of their software. Ours is just a side note. If it will, great. If not, they want you to buy their software.
Okay, let me catch up just a little bit. A lot of attendees, so there's a lot of questions.
Sure.
Let's see here. And then Joseph asks, can I download updates from the J90 1939 Datalink, or is it best to do it from the ECM like Cummins? Are you familiar with that?
I am not 100% sure what he means. There's software in the body control module and some of the smart modules on the truck that are updatable through the Diamond Logic Builder software, and that's going to be a dealer-only option.
Dale asks if the odometer is programmable from the DLB software.
Yes.
An interesting question here. Michael asked, besides the real-time clock battery, is there any other user serviceable parts in the BCM?
No, there is not.
And then John asks, is the AC system tied into the body controller and are we able to do some diagnosis on that system through the DLB?
It's 100% through the body controller. And yes, we would use the Diagnostic Builder software to see all those signals to diagnose it. And our software has the capability of looking at inputs, looking at outputs, and what we can actually do with our software is override or simulate an input. We can override and simulate or force an output. And what we don't see or what's in between there that's separate from ins and outs are the algorithms or the softwares that's inside, all the little things that has to be met as far as pressures, temperatures before an AC clutch will engage. Those are not seen, but you'll have to go into your diagnostic manual to actually see those criteria.
And James asks, does the diagnostic software for Navistar allow graphing of the data?
Yes, there is a snapshot or recording of the different signals in there that are that you can play back. Yes.
And then Rick, do we have, did you provide a link at all to the bodybuilder website? Did that go through? Somebody asked, many people are asking about that.
I don't have the website memorized, but I'm sure you can Google Navistar bodybuilder and it will come up. I tested it before I got on. Same with our service software. If you Google Navistar service software, you will find a link. Otherwise, I think Anna emailed it to Dave.
Kevin asked about the Logic Builder course, if that's currently available now.
Yes, there's like 3. Well, they're integrated into 2. I think there are 2 different courses for that. And then there's a hands-on class for dealers. It's a 2-day class. And for TEMs or upfitters, there's a 3-day class available to the guys that want to be able to write their own logic.
And Brian asked, what is the best place to source the Navistar wiring diagrams?
The bodybuilder website will have many of them on there. So I'm going to minimize my screen. Hopefully it don't mess with you guys. No, I can't do that. Never mind. I was going to swap screens, but it's on the link that Anna sent Dave.
I think I was just able to send a link out to that Peter had shared, and that might fix some of it.
Okay. I was going to look for Anna's email.
Yeah, what was provided was the bodybuilder.navistar.com and then some /, but that gets them to the bodybuilder site and they can go from there.
Correct. Yeah.
And then Brad asked, are bus body diagrams on the website?
No, that is a whole different website, and that's through the IC Corporation